Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch Harlan, and welcome to the Truth Talks podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Jon Petrick. Jon, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me, buddy.
All right, so I'm going to end up having to call you Jon instead of Dr. Petrick, if that's all right. I mean, we've been friends for a long time. We're going to talk a pretty heavy topic here, politics. And I think as I don't keep it a secret, we've actually never run much of a political type of podcast before, and primarily because I'm not the greatest fan of politics. But recently I've been following them, and then coming to find out that my good friend is running for a very powerful position. So I'm going to talk a little bit about your character a little bit later. But first of all, introduce yourself and tell us what you're doing.
Well, my name is Dr. Jon Petrick. I am a physician here in Las Vegas, Nevada, Clark County. I've been a physician for 22 years in Vegas. I've been very, very blessed to have truly some of the best mentors professionally I could ask for. That allowed me an opportunity to work with some professional athletes and some teams. I worked for 13 years on Dana White's reality TV show, The Ultimate Fighter. And no real reason other than just Vegas seemed like the greatest place on earth because everybody flew here. All my athletes were here, but I love Las Vegas, and I've been a wonderful contributor to the community. At least I think so. I love helping people, and it has been a wonderful opportunity. People don't know this, Mitch, but Las Vegas is one of the most philanthropic places in the country. There's so many different variables of ways you can help your community, and from nonprofits, philanthropic purposes, events, and things like that. So I love being here. It's been a great time. And then I decided during the pandemic, I'm always asked this question, Dr. Petrick, why did you want to leave a very successful practice here and in other places and decide that you're going to change your life and run for office? And I didn't want to give a bogus answer. I really wanted to think about it, what really kind of pushed me over the edge. And I had to kind of soul search and leave my ego at the door and realize fear. I was fear. During the pandemic, we had OSHA come into our practice. They came in and wanted me to tell them I needed to mask my staff, my patients. They didn't even give me the opportunity to give any explanation or anything. They wanted to interview my staff and my doctors that work with me. And they didn't have warrants. They did not have subpoenas. And it was at that moment that I realized I don't know my constitutional rights. I thought that I did, and maybe I talked a good game at one time, maybe sitting around the bar having a beer, like, hey, that's a right, that's a right. But the truth was I didn't know. And therefore I took it upon myself and said, hey, that's never happening to me ever again. I'm going to do something about it. And that do something about it was I took over 360 hours of constitutional and historical document training and interpretation. On my website, I narrated the entire Nevada Constitution from the very first word to the last word. And it's used as a tool. I mean, that's really where the foundation of government stems from, is the Constitution, and whether it be your state or your federal. And you could say at 49 years old, I fell in love with American literature. And there's so many stories that go around it, from our national anthem to the very first female employee of the United States of America. There were so many awesome, amazing stories that I fell in love. And I remember having a stepfather that was a colonel in the Marine Corps. And I remember him telling us a story one time about, at some point, everybody should be serving their country, regardless of whether it be through the military or through community service or even through, running for office. And having lost him 3 years ago and never have had the opportunity to serve, and he was a colonel in the Marine Corps, he was, a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, a true man's man. And there was always this deep thing inside me that said I had more to give to my state, to my community, and ultimately to my country. And when big mountains are ahead of you, you either run from them or you run to them. And I ran to this one, and I'm very, very excited about my run. We did very well in our primary. We won 70% of our the vote in the primary, which is fantastic. And we're looking to carry that momentum into our general. So I've walked 3,854 doors myself. Knock, knock, knock. Hey, it's Dr. Petrick. I'm here to hopefully save our state and our country. I want to meet everybody. So we have 6,000 homes as our minimum goal by the end of the month of October. You put us in position to win in November. And that's kind of my campaign and my run in a nutshell. As far as what brought me here ultimately was that that inability to recognize my own rights, and wanted to change that. And I've loved the whole process, from the people I've met on the trail to understanding the legislative process in a whole different level now. And I'm even more grateful that I chose to do this, because unfortunately, as you are in the political world and you're shown different things, you realize some things you just can't unsee. And now it's not only my right to do this, but it's my duty. There are things that are happening, Mitch, that would make a grown man squeamish. There are really bad things happening by bad people, and we got to change that. So we're going to do so.
Well, I love that. So I'm going to tell you, you knew that this wasn't going to be an easy interview. This is not a softball game that we're playing here. And I'm going to tell you this. I'm not near as much into the political realm. I'm probably the Dr. Petrick before those you came into your office, right? And I'm a little bit cynical on politics. Not a little bit. I'm a lot cynical on politics. Let me tell you where I come from. I've sat out in the backyard with you on your deck at your home in Nevada. I know your daughter. I know how much you love your daughter. Know your brother. He's crazy. We'll give him a shout out. Fun guy. And I know he supports you. I've seen some pictures on Facebook. I know some of your friends. I know you as a person, and you're not the kind of guy that I would say is that prototypical politician. Like, when I hear the word politics, I immediately get this queasy feeling in my stomach. And when you started to run, I thought, you know what? I know this guy, man. He's going to make some changes. He's going to do something that other people haven't done. And that means probably running uphill. Do you find that's what you're doing right now?
No, first I want to say I respect that. I get that a lot. Right now, if you look at the approval rating of Congress, man, we're lower than CNN's over us, right? Or people in politics. So I get that, especially with the last election. There's a lot of distrust on both sides. Everybody hated Trump, and everybody even hates Biden worse. So I get that there's a lot of hate. But I want to remind you that the system itself is beautiful. It really is a beautiful system of government, the representative government versus a democracy versus a republic. And once you understand that this experiment, that's what this originally was an experiment on government. And some ways we've done a really good job of adhering to that. And then in some ways we've allowed interpretation to come in and kind of taint that. But I want to remind you that the process is the government that we have here in the United States is still the best organization of government anywhere in the world. Now, you mentioned me as a politician, and I want to remind you that me I'm a man, and I think that that's what happens in politics is that we take the humanity out of it. We forget that politicians, if you will, utilizing the term, are humans. And we have fears, and we're not immune to mental illness in our families and our friends. We're not immune to struggling financially. We're not immune to crime. We're not immune to fear and all of these things. We just want to take them outside of the human being. And I think that kind of falls over to a little bit on from the party lines a little bit. For me, I'm a physician. When I took my oath 22 years ago, the same oath you took, I didn't look at that oath as I'm going to take an oath only for this population of Republicans or Democrats. I didn't look at the color of their skin or their sexuality. I looked at a human being, and that's what physicians do. So I think that my involvement in politics is a fresh face. It's a fresh new ideas. We need, especially on the alternative medicine side. I mean, this pandemic was our baby in our wheelhouse as chiropractic physicians. This is our baby. We've been preaching the immune system since, we began, right? So I looked at that as an empowerment moment. This is our baby. Let me further this alternative medicine. Let's prevent a disease rather than treat one. So I bring that to the table. And then if you look at politics and you were to break it down into two different sides, Mitch, this is kind of interesting. Since Gerald Ford, the Republican Party, has not brought forth a president or vice president that's been an attorney. And on the contrary, since 1976, every single person that the Democratic Party has brought over to run for president and vice president has been an attorney. Now, I have nothing against attorneys, but I want you to understand the philosophical background and the training that goes into both. As a businessman, we look at things as a win-win. We want to bring the best collaborated efforts, regardless of race, color, creed, or where their social background is. We want to bring the best ideas for the winning of the team. At least good, successful business leaders do that. That's how we're trained. That's how we're taught. We're taught to empower people. We're taught to look at the best business ideas and then implement them so that the team can feel the success. But as an attorney, attorneys have a win-lose mentality. It's how they're trained. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I have great attorneys. I have plenty. Trust me, a lot on payroll. So I love them and appreciate them. But I want you to understand the dynamic of the parties. So you have a party of the businessman and you have a party of an attorney. So when I hear a party that says, hey, let's talk about unity, let's talk about bringing this country together. But for many years, some of them 30 years, 40 years in practice, have always had the mentality of a win-lose. So I don't find them as impactful. And you can look at the states around the country and the cities and find out who are the business people that are making the solutions happen from all sides, from Black, from white, from gay, from straight, from Republican and Democrat. Those are the leaders. And you don't have to have stripes on your arm to have honor and leadership. So a lot of these things don't necessarily come from leadership, militaristic. Leaders empower people. Leaders make you feel safe. And I use that as a contrast between the parties because I'm now a new politician, I'm looking at it from that perspective. Like as a physician, I look at it as I want to help every human. It doesn't mean I can, and it doesn't mean I'm always going to agree with them. But as doctors, we're trained to listen. We want to hear our patient because we're trained to observe. How did they move? How did they speak? Did they lisp? Did they talk? Was their face drooping? We look at all of these physical observation tools for us to diagnose and assess a patient. And that's how I approach things, as not necessarily where I'm coming from, but where they're coming from. But even like my opponent, who's an attorney, she's only coming from this as a win-lose. She has to. In order to be a successful attorney, she's got to be good at this. And again, I'm not bagging on attorneys, but I wanted to make that huge distinction in the two parties right now, different than pro-life, pro-choice. It's way beyond that, because there's people in both sides who like both things. I mean, you can be a Democrat Catholic and not like abortion, right? And the same side, you can be a Republican that said, hey, I made a mistake as a young girl. I did this, so I'm not necessarily opposed to it. So you have to be open. And I hope that answers your question as far as politics. I don't find myself a politician. I find myself a concerned citizen. I find myself a community leader that loves everybody, regardless of their party. I must, or I'm going to fail.
And I love that explanation. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And because I'm the same way, right? I probably lean more conservative, but I can definitely see there's other sides of that fence. And actually, even before the show, me and producer Chad even got into a little bit of a political discussion, which always makes it fun. Why does it seem like everybody's got to be one side or the other?
They don't. That's one of the reasons why the Republican Party has a tendency to get the shit kicked out of it, because we have a tendency to see both sides. The Republican Party doesn't want to stoop to certain levels of distrust and skullduggery, if you will. And I see it. And I'm not saying it's not out there. Let me be clear. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, because bad people are in every corner. I get it. But when you fundamentally look at the parties, and and from when I'm out there talking to these people and those people, being Democrats, Republicans, and both, the combination ultimately comes down to is moral code. Republicans have a tendency to want to be a little bit more biblical, hanging on to their life, hanging on to those biblical, those Christian beliefs. God in our schools, God on our money, God in our house, God in our car. And then you have the other side that wants the opposite of that. And again, so you got to walk a fine line, because you don't want your schools to be teaching any religion. So you have to be careful, on those types of things. So because you have to have a winner and a loser, unfortunately. And I think that's the problem, that one of the reasons we have is there's always a winner and loser. And in order to do so, the only thing that politics has become now is, how bad do I make my opponent? What bad thing can I say about my opponent? However, my campaign, we have refused to send out any negative mail pieces or any negative. Matter of fact, our newspaper reviewed me and said, Dr. Petrick says that you will not disparage his opponent in any way. Yeah, come on, I'm not a bully. And first of all, if you can't argue on the content, and if you're not confident in the message, then you don't need to be in politics. But I'm not a screamer. I like to see everybody tone it down a little bit. Let's get back to good old-fashioned debate and ideas and constructive, a different matrix. So I wish there wasn't a win-lose all the time, but unfortunately, there can only be one person that represents a group. And I'm hoping that I'm in my state, I'm hoping to be that unity group that everybody knows that at least with Petrick, they can be heard.
I wish people in Nevada could know you like I know you, and I know they're not going to. They're going to vote on a side. They're going to vote on a letter. They're not going to vote on you as really getting to know who Jon is. Dr. Petrick, tell me this.
That. I'm sorry. I'm going to fix that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So let's just take your state of Nevada, because I'm always interested in this. What is it that you're looking to change out there?
One, I want to, as far as some of the legislation that I want to bring forth, there's already good legislation. Let me remind you, there's already good legislation. We have the largest school district in this country. Think about that. We have the largest school district in the country in Clark County. And in 2017, they voted to break it up so that they could create competition and they could create some various benefits to the school and to the education. However, out of fear of the ACLU and the NAACP, everybody's been feckless and cowardly and haven't really said, this is what we're doing. I propose utilizing the municipal boundaries that are already in place so nobody has any complaints or concerns. Move on. Let's use the municipal boundaries, break the school district up. Everybody's happy, no fear of suit from the NAACP or ACLU. Two, on November 8th, they're running a joint resolution 8, a Senate joint resolution number 8, where they're trying to change our Constitution in Nevada, Article 1, Section 24, to include words like sexual orientation, expression, identification. Now, I remind you, I'm on the Republican side, right? So I'm about protecting rights. So why am I opposed to that? I'm opposed to it because I've done the research and study on it. And why would you want to add orientation, expression, identification to an equality section of the Constitution when the word equal comes from the Greek word, which is logos, which means to think and to speak. So in Nevada, if you can think and speak, we're equal. So why would they want to add those words? Well, they're being nefarious because they're using the same floor plan, the same map, no pun intended yet, that they used in California to add other words in the Constitution, to change it later on to include words like minor attracted persons or MAPS. And you can look in California, this is an opinion. So they're trying to change it because it doesn't need to be changed, so why would they? And that's vague. If I asked you, tell me what an orientation means or expression. What, I'm a 50-year-old man and I want to express myself as a 14-year-old soccer girl. Give me my uniform, sir, and don't say anything. Are you out of your mind? So one of the things I want to change is I want my state to stop trying to modify the Constitution from interpretation and leave it as is. Whether it be our Second Amendment, which in the federal, but in our amendment here in our Constitution of Nevada, leave it alone. Stop changing stuff. That's what makes it muddy. I also like to see the repeal of 321, which was the mail-in ballot, mass mail-in ballots without request. That's stupid. Voter ID. That's even worse. It's like, come on, I can't check out a library book, buy a dog, get on a plane, buy a beer, but I can to vote without ID. Same-day registration. Like you haven't had 364 days to register yourself. The day of the election, it just pops into your head. Oh, I better register today. You see, so I want to get back to common sense. I'm going to bounce around inside the legislature and I'm going to wake everybody up, in a sense, the Conor McGregor of the legislation, because I'm not, one, going to be pushed around. And two, the people are worth fighting for. People are too worried about their names or too worried about how people think of things. No, it's right and wrong, not better and worse. So what I bring is a lot of energy. There's nobody going to outwork me. Bring it. I love that. My enemy's up already. Don't worry. So I'm going to bring a lot of energy. I'm going to repeal the commerce tax. I want to extend the pink tax, which is on feminine products. Women don't pay tax on that, and rightfully so. But why are terminal patients paying tax on certain products and services? Get rid of that. They're dying. Why should people be penalized at this stage of their life? Let that money be spent on their families. Let that money be spent on time, things, so there's so much that can be done. Crime. Look how bad crime is right now in the judicial system. And remember, I mentioned at the beginning of the when we were kidding around, kind of talking why I chose the legislation, because I understand the Constitution. The legislation was created in three different branches, with the legislative branch being the big stick. That's the big stick. I got impeachment power. I can hold people accountable. Judges let prisoners out. We have second and third offense murderers with anklets in my state. Think about that. You commit a crime, they don't incarcerate you or hold you. They let you out on your own recognizance with sometimes cashless bail with an anklet around your ankle. Are you out of your mind? I look at these. So we need to hold these judges accountable.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff is logic, and I knew it would be with you, and because I just know you, and that's the thing that always makes me a little bit kind of really cynical on politics, because it just seems like it's become an emotional reaction or an emotional argument. I was actually, as you were sitting there talking about that, I was actually picturing you behind the podium of the President of the United States seal, and I'm thinking, oh man, there'd be some stuff changing. Well, what's your aspirations? Where do you want to go?
You know, that's a great question. So I'd like to see myself in federal Congress or maybe governor. But, you know, you got to win one race at a time. And I'm not running my race to win. I'm running my race to dominate. And there's a difference. And that means I want all the votes. I want all the people. And it's not that I want them in a tyrannical way. It's I want to meet them. I want them to see my heart before they hear my voice. And I think that's the only way to do that in these local races is knock at the door. As I said, I've hit over 3,800 personal. I've knocked on 3,800 doors so far. We're going to get to 6,000. But I really don't have aspirations of staying in politics forever. It's funny that you say the president thing. I truly do believe that there's got to be a level of somewhat of insanity, of almost to really want that job. You know, one of the things on the campaign trail I always tell people is, listen, I reassure you, we are way more alike than we're different. And when I'm reaching out to the opposing side, it goes back to that old saying, you got two ears and one mouth. You have to listen. But I'm finding, Mitch, right now, regardless of whether it's economy or prices or Democrat, Republican, the overlying thing that is in our country right now is stress, mental crisis, and fatigue. There are so many things that happen on a daily basis when I'm walking the district. And the first thing I look at is when they at least are kind enough to open the doors, I look in their eyes. Like you talk about, the eyes are the windows to the soul. And if you truly, genuinely love people, and you're now looking at these people and you're seeing that fear, that they're afraid, they're nervous, they look at things and they are just so afraid. You almost, I mean, you can't let that helplessness lie. You got to do something. And, you know, you brought up abortion and you brought up, you know, the Second Amendment. And these are very complex topics. And there are always two sides to them. So what happens is that when one side is not capable of acknowledging the other, that's when true thought is stopped. That's when progress is hampered. So I would love to come back. I'd love to be able to share people. Look, this isn't easy. I would love to have, if you have viewership that have specific questions. And if I don't know, I'm so honest. I'm just gonna say, I don't know. That's a great question. But there's so many things, the Second Amendment, you know, especially what's going on now. And real briefly, just to hit this, just because you mentioned it, Roe versus Wade, because people don't know the Constitution, and they allow the media to distort the outcomes and to distort the message, it fearmongers. Roe versus Wade, for everybody listening, was just jurisdictional. It had nothing to do with women. It had nothing to do with pro-life or pro-choice. It only dealt with, do we have the right to hear the argument according to the Constitution? The answer was legally, and they got it right, no. The Supreme Court does not have the right to hear this argument on abortion. Why? Because abortion is not in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. Therefore, the power must fall back to the states. So I get why I was so upset. The most upsetting part was that explanation wasn't given. So it allowed a whole entire population of people right now to run around with false interpretation or misunderstanding, and they're believing it. In my state, all the ads and all the things they put out about us against us is abortion. And in Nevada, we voted in 1990 that we're an abortion state. Nobody can change it. Not Democrat, Republican, legislation, Senate, or House, or executive branch. No one can do it. It's for the people. It's a referendum. True democracy at its finest. And there's nothing that we can do about it. But yet they fearmonger, and you see the ads, they're going to do away with abortion. It's just crazy. It's just a lie. I'd like to see that change. You know, one of the other things, I just want to touch on this one piece because you mentioned it, the mental piece. Colorado did a great thing, and I'm in favor of it. And I mentioned this to you about the legalization of certain recreational, which were once considered recreational drugs, the cannabis. So many things we now learn about head injury and certain CBD oils and things like that, protecting the neurons in the brain from a new protein. And now we're seeing with our veterans that are coming back. You know, Mitch, we lose 22 veterans every day to suicide. And when we could add salicylic acids and other types of mushrooms and certain things, and they stop killing themselves, I'm in favor of that. But this war on drugs and this war on this mentality, this war on the right to try and things, these are some of the things I'd like to bring to Nevada. Let our veterans have a chance. Let people try. If you're in the last stages of your life and you wanted to try an experimental drug, you should have that right. And I believe that. And I think that there's so many common sense things. But I don't want to be long-winded. It's your show. I'm grateful to be here. Yes, I'd love to be here many times. I'd love to have different topics come up. I won't always have answers, but I certainly will be able to render my opinion.
No, I would love it. You're just a real logical guy, and I do think that people really can listen to things and maybe understand it and come from a section. The only hurdle I think that a person's got to get over is how do you earn and win that trust, right? And so I hope that people do listening to this, hopefully that gets out in your state and so on and so forth. To know the guy, right, is to know the truth. I know you. I've known you for a long time. I know that you absolutely have the best interest of the people. This is really fun. I don't like to run a lot of these things because politics gets me mad, and it's one of my ways of making me help relax myself. But I do want to bring you back, I want to talk some topics, and I think, again, there's a lot of people that will agree, disagree, whatever, but at least we're doing the one thing that I think the world needs, and that's debate. Healthy, good, conversational debate. So Dr. Jon Petrick, I hope you win. I hope you end up becoming president. And if you do, you better come back on my show, man, because that would be wrong if you didn't.
Hey, is Mindy going to be there?
She'll be here. Everybody asked that. That's what everybody asked, damn it. All right, my brother, I love you. You're a great dude. Yeah, I hope it all goes well for you. I'm going to follow you every way. And if there's anything I can do for you, let me know.
Thanks, man. Say hi to Chad for me. I love you guys.
All right, will do. Yep, he's back there doing his thing, but I appreciate it, buddy.
Bye-bye.